The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Avivus webinar for digital transformation, focusing specifically on environmental and waste services this morning. My name's Bernie Simmons. I'm going to be your main facilitator this morning. And when I say this morning, we'll run somewhere between, I would think, kind of 50 to 60 minutes, give or take. So you'll be on your way and able to get on with the rest of your Wednesday by 11 o'clock at the very latest, I would say. And that's my responsibility to make sure that happens, so you can blame me if it doesn't for any reason. I say I'm your main facilitator. I'm also ably assisted by my colleague Rachel Clinton. You won't hear from Rachel this morning, but Rachel is in the background making sure that everything is running smoothly. And the other important function that Rachel fulfills is to help with questions. So because we've got quite a large number of people on the call, on the session this morning, the webinar service that we use automatically allows us to mute all lines, which is what we do. And we do that not because we don't want you to interact, quite the opposite, but we do that because we know that many of you sat in open plan offices, there may be background noise that is beyond your control to manage. And we want to make sure that everyone can hear clearly and see clearly. So we mute everybody's lines. The point of me sharing that is to say that if you've got a question, we do encourage you to raise them. And if you could raise your questions using the chat facility on the webinar control console that will be visible to you once you've logged in, and direct those questions to Rachel, and Rachel will do her best to answer them. And we do encourage you to interact through the chat facility if you have questions that occur to you as we move through the content this morning. In some cases, Rachel will be able to answer those directly, and if that's the case, she will respond to you. In some cases, it may be a more detailed or nuanced answer, or we may need to understand some detail around the context of the question, in which case we'll maybe take that offline with you and deal with it separately, but we will make sure that your questions get answered. So that being a start of introduction and welcome, the other thing I would say is we're recording this session. So we record the sessions to make sure that they're available on demand after the event has run. So if you see this and you like what you see and you think it would be relevant and helpful to other colleagues, you can share those links with them, which we will send out later today. And we will also be making available a copy of the slides that we're using, which takes me on to the structure of the session for the next 45 minutes or so. In terms of agenda, introduction and recent background. So we're kind of starting on that process. I also want to give you a bit of an overview of the My Council Services platform structure. Many of the participants in this session may not be familiar with Avivus as a company and the My Council Services platform as a product. So it behoves us to make sure that we provide some sort of introduction and just an overview of the structure and how the thing sits together. We're not going to bore you to tears with a load of corporate background, but it's very much around the product set and the solution set that we offer. I'll then walk you through a demo of actually multiple facets of the My Council Services platform. We'll start very much looking at kind of waste-based processes or waste and environmental services processes, but we'll start by looking at customer self-service for raising waste-related tickets and service requests and contract sign-ups and so on. So we'll be looking at the waste module, the contracts module, a bit of customer self-service, so on and so forth. And I'll do most of that through demo, so that will be probably the bulk of what we do today. And then we'll just dip back into a few slides, and I'll share with you some other features of the waste module. There's a couple of other additional modules that I'd also like to share as part of the session if we get time. And we've talked about how we'll handle question and answer. Please do that through the chat facility, directing your questions to my colleague Rachel, and she will answer them for you. So let's get on with the main event, really. Challenges to waste and environmental services. And again, this is probably not telling you anything you don't already know, but it's worth just stopping and giving it some consideration for a minute or two. Waste and environmental services, in particular in the context of local authorities, are resource intensive. It requires significant physical assets, significant labour power, personnel power to make things run smoothly. There are also, waste-related services, whether you're thinking about curbside collections, domestic collections, trade collections, signed up, revenue-neutral, paid-for collections such as green garden waste, whatever it might be. They're things that are important to us as residents of our local district, borough, or unitary authority. Collection of our unwanted refuse is incredibly important to us because it affects our immediate environment, and it's one of the things that we pay good money through our council tax for, so we expect it to be done well. But it doesn't remove the fact from a council point of view that they are very resource intensive and require lots of effort and energy to do well and run it smoothly. There are issues that occur, mist and contaminated bins, for example, things that customers get irate and upset about and will be very quick to contact the council in regard to, should they feel they've been misserved or had a subpar experience in some way. And sometimes, because of the resource intensity and the importance and emotive nature of the service that you're delivering to your customers, it can lead to kind of risk aversion in the service area, and that sometimes can lead to what we would describe as a bit of a lack of innovation. The other big reason I think that's stymied sometimes innovation recently, although sometimes it's a catalyst to it, is budgetary constraint and general organisational uncertainty. And in prevailing conditions of austerity, and the nation seems to have been under those conditions for the last 10 years plus with no immediate significant change as far as we can see, that can also lead to issues of how do you innovate effectively, given that you've got a lack of resources with which to innovate, and perhaps a lack of funds to invest around. As a result of that lack of innovation, sometimes there's a lack of automation, and there are various other challenges and issues and things that you will require as a local authority delivering these mandated services. The other thing that you might find is you're set up in different ways. Of course, sometimes collections are done with in-house resources, sometimes contracted out to a third party. The solutions that we provide can cater to all of those scenarios. Particularly, it's important when you're doing it in-house, but it's particularly important if you're doing it as a contracted exercise, that you've got analytics and insight in terms of what's going on with that contracted relationship, what you're paying for, what you're not paying for. And so analytics and analysis of data off the back of collections, rounds, revenues and so on is crucially important. We'll touch on some of those features today. So that's a bit of background to the specifics. In terms of the My Council Services product and how it maps to what you might describe as a contemporary local authority structure, I've just popped a schematic up on screen, and I'll just use a pointer option to draw a few markers and make it clear what I'm talking about. But if you think about the local authority structure in a contemporary context, you've got a whole bunch of customers in your district, borough, unitary area, whatever it might be. You've got various channels of contact. Telephone-based customer service is probably still a feature. Certainly you'll be looking to do, if you're not already doing, significant chunks of your transactional work over the web or via smartphones and tablet devices. That might be browser-based, it might be app-based. You're probably still getting unsolicited emails, and somewhere lumped in with customer services, you probably also have still a significant rump of face-to-face contact, which you may be trying to channel shift and so on. And all of these sorts of technologies that we're going to share with you this morning are part of that process. So to speak to this layer of connectivity, this multi-channel customer connectivity capability, we offer a suite of tools around customer self-service, e-forms, native mobile applications, and then immediate tools for managing those transactions, doing things like assisted attractions through our CRM and service desk tools. Sitting behind that, this is where we can really start to differentiate as an offering and as a company in terms of our product, is the depth of functionality that we then can offer behind those e-form and self-service interfaces. So we offer a whole range of what we call line of business modules, integration capabilities and automation and master data management capabilities. More about those in a moment. And we then also offer a suite of mobile working tools, some of which I'll try and show you this morning if we have time, that relates specifically and very pertinently to things like waste, public protection, environmental services and so on. The other thing to remember from a digital process and digital transaction point of view is that there's always a customer at the centre of the vast majority of the transactions that you're managing, dealing with and processing, and it's probably quite important to keep those customers up to date. So it's important that our platform allows for scheduled and automated communication back to the customer. There's a whole bunch of what we call a rules engine and an automation engine sitting on our platform that you can apply to waste-based processes that you might be running through and with it. So that's kind of a broad architecture and overview of the platform that we call My Council Services, and crucially, really how that maps to the way a contemporary local authority is typically structured. So with your customer service sitting pan-organisational, able to help customers at first point of contact, and then depth of expertise, technical expertise, and service delivery capability sitting in the particular service areas, and our products mapping to those particular areas. If I move on from that and just dip into a bit more detail, I want to talk briefly about the self-service piece. We'll take a quick look at this in a minute, and we'll take a quick look at it as a kind of my account enterprise and manifestation, and how that can work, and particularly how that can work in the context of a local authority and a waste services function within a local authority. It's also not uncommon to see local authorities end up with multiple different portal interfaces, so different products, each of which offer a customer-facing portal. That can become a major headache from things like single sign-on, general maintenance, not to mention expense of maintaining all those individual portals. So what we're providing is an enterprise pan-organisational portal that can be deployed, as well as something that could be deployed purely for the waste function if you wanted to do that. But generally, we would recommend an enterprise approach to these things, particularly in the context of the new era of GDPR as of late last month, which we are fully equipped for and set up for. So a bit about the self-service and customer digital access capabilities. If I then drop back into some of the line of business functionality that we offer as a full integrated component on the platform, there are two specific features that we'll be looking at this morning in this area. We'll be looking at the waste management module, and we'll be looking at license and contracts management. So I'll touch on those and break them down for you as we move through the morning. But we offer additional functions and features, a module that does scheduling and bookings of appointments, for example. So think about for example, the booking of a bulky upload collection, and that might be something that you offer as a paid-for service. But that could equally extend to the booking of a registry office, the booking of a sports facility that's run by the council, the booking of a meeting room. So there are these line of business functions or sets of functionality that we've developed that actually apply across multiple different service areas. So My Council Service as an offering is very much about the ability to enable your end-to-end digital waste processes, but we play much more broadly as an enterprise piece across the local authority. And at that point, I should also mention that we only work with local authorities. We don't go off and try and sell this platform as a insurance digital enabler or a banking digital enablement platform for customer service. We only work with local authorities, and we've built up a great deal of expertise in that regard. So a little about the line of business feature and function. Let me drop back down into the mobile working capability. So there are some specific tools in here that enable really members of your workforce and arguably members of your contracted workforce potentially to leverage the same technology through tablets and smartphone devices using native mobile applications that are secure, encrypted, and all about enabling both online and offline mobile working. And that comes in different flavors and formats. There's a mobile manager format, a more generic mobile worker format. So that might be someone collecting tasks in terms of, they've got a list of fly tips that they need to go and deal with in that day, and they're coming in on an ad hoc basis. So you might be adding those to their list. You might be enabling a waste worker. That might be someone in the cab of a refuse collection vehicle that's going out and doing collections to swipe off each property as it's done, that kind of capability. And I'll try and show you a little bit as we work through that this morning. All of that capability, because it's smartphone-based, tablet-based, also enables, and we've built a whole bunch of functionality around kind of workforce management and tracking, which I'll talk about in a bit more detail. So our response to kind of waste management transformation, make it self-service for customers wherever it's appropriate to do so. And it's probably fair to say that for most waste services, it's appropriate for automation and it's appropriate for self-service. Build as much automation into that process as you can. Our part of the bargain is to make sure that we can deliver those solutions in a cost-effective way and, crucially, in a scalable way. When you start to think about certainly domestic collections, you're talking about minimum tens of thousands of customers or thousands of customers, and even in the smallest UK authorities. So it's a complex problem that you need to be able to scale. So I've mentioned already the kind of ability to deliver this across multiple different waste streams of activity. So think about scheduled waste services, things like sharps and clinical connections, standard curbside collections for domestic waste, both non-recyclable, recyclable, so on and so forth. Green garden waste, I'm going to show you an example of that next in a few moments. And the platform can also be, and is also being configured for use in trade waste applications where it's proving quite effective. And also things like ad hoc waste services I mentioned earlier in my description of the way the platform can be configured and set up, that it's perfectly suitable for booking, payment, and then scheduling of bulky waste collection. So lots of examples as to why and how the platform can be deployed. So I promised you, 10 or 15 minutes of positioning and a little bit of PowerPoint. What I want to do now is step out of this and actually show you some of the technology live, if I may. So we'll jump out of the slides. We'll get rid of my scribbles on those earlier slides. And the first place I'm going to take us to is across to a browser. And what I'm going to do first off, actually, is just log in as a customer. So I'm going to, we're just going to use a demo site this morning. But this is one of the ways that you could present the technology as a customer portal effectively. We're running in a very generic format here because this is a demonstration instance. When we deliver this for clients, it would be a fully branded and embedded part of the government.gov.uk web property that your organisation is running, so that you wouldn't be sending customers to a separate domain, a separate location. They would be arriving at your web property, and our technology would appear and present to them as an integral part of their online experience on your own web property. One of the ways that you can present that is in a portal format, which is what we're looking at here. And I just want to point a couple of things out. We're logged in as an identified customer, a fictitious character called Gary Wilcox, who's a fictitious resident of the London Borough of Redbridge. The reason we use Redbridge is our first office was based in Redbridge before we moved into central London a couple of years ago. So we did a lot of our demo work working around that borough. And as Gary logs in as an identified customer, I'll give you a quick tour of the screen real estate. On the left-hand side, you've got a configurable list of basically accessibility options in terms of things that Gary as a registered customer can do. In the center of the page, I've got a whole bunch of what we call widgets or hotspots. When I first log in, I get some guidance that gives me an opportunity to take a quick tutorial and learn the navigation of the site. I'm going to just turn that off because I'm doing that with you and for you. And then on the right-hand sidebar, we've got a whole bunch of other options and capabilities for Gary as a registered customer to see all of his service requests that he's raised, and if it's a draft service request, any contracts he may have created with the council, there's a clue there in what's coming next, any appointments and bookings he may have made, any outstanding tasks that are associated with him in terms of tasks that respond to service requests that he's raised. And as we drop down that list, so we get into ever-increasing detail, whereby Gary can verify and authenticate details around if he's a landlord, if he's a business owner in the borough. These would only present based on the profile of the customer. So Gary is set up as a profile that's all singing and all dancing, so he sees everything. But that can expand and contract based on the profile of the customer, whether they're a resident, whether they're a business user, whether they're a landlord, whatever it might be. And also it can expand and contract on whether how to what level they are authenticated and verified. So Gary is fully authenticated and verified, so he can view things like his council tax payments, so on and so forth. That's a story for another day, so I'm going to leave that piece there, but I just wanted to give you a quick tour of the screen real estate, as it were. So I can do a couple of things at this point. I could drop into any of the form capability. So if I went into report it, for example, I'd get presented with a whole range of different report it forms that Gary as a customer could use. So if you wanted to go in and report a fly tip on his street, you could go and do that. And if we've got time, we may come back and do that. But I want to do something that's a slightly more involved process first off, and more pointed and more specific for the waste arena. So I'm going to jump back to the home page. And what I'm going to do is I want to show you another feature of the portal, which is its ability to be searched and interrogated. So Gary's arrived as a customer at the portal this morning, and he wants to sign up for a green garden waste paid for collection, because he's got a large garden and he wants his grass cuttings and hedge trimmings and so on to be collected on a regular basis. So he doesn't know where that form is, so he starts to type in what he thinks will be the right search term, green garden waste. And the entire portal is context sensitive and indexed for search. So two of the first things that pop up are a knowledge base article around rubbish collections, but also a specific form called green garden waste registration. And lo and behold, that's exactly what Gary's looking for. So he clicks on that. So within literally a couple of clicks of arriving at the portal as a logged in identified customer, he's into a process that allows him to transact with the waste services function in this regard. So he drops into that particular page. He could have navigated through that page through the apply for it option or the report it option, signed up for it, but he's searched for it and he's found the appropriate transaction digital page that he wants to work through. He knows and can see quite quickly the anatomy of the process he's working through. He's found the form. He's on the first step of that, which is around garden waste. There's a second step, which is payment. We then complete that payment and then confirmation. So there's then a set of explanatory information that's presented to the customer that explains a little about the process here. Just a quick acknowledgement and a confession at this point. We've actually picked this process up in terms of the way it's been set up and designed and some of the context around it directly from one of our customers. So this comes from Monmouthshire County Council. So there's embedded links that link to Monmouthshire content and so on and so forth. So we thought it would be useful to, albeit this is a demo environment, to try and give you sort of a sense of realism of how one of our customers is approaching this particular process. So there's some contextual information around the green garden waste process as Gary is signing up for it, and then we get into a registration section. Now the first section of that starts to ask Gary some basic questions about who he is and at what stage he's at with green garden waste. So the first question we ask him is, are you a new or returning customer? So that's a drop-down option, and Gary in this case is going to say he's a new customer, so he hasn't got a current green garden waste contract. And note the important word there is contract. What we're not doing here is just stepping through a simple e-form. It feels to Gary like that's exactly what he's doing. He's just working through a straightforward e-form. But what he's actually doing is starting to put in place the underpinnings for what will be an ongoing and easy to maintain contract with the appropriate termination clauses with the council, because he's paying for a service. So his obligation is to pay for that service, to present his bin on time, to make sure his bin isn't contaminated. And the council's quid pro quo for Gary meeting his end in the bargain and handing up cash and doing things right is to make sure that his green garden waste is collected on a regular basis. So the next question that we ask Gary to think about is, how many permits would you like? So permits is the basis upon which Monmouthshire organise their green garden waste collection. If you do it at your council on 240 litre brown plastic wheelie bins, then you can configure the process, configure the platform to reflect your process. So this has been configured to reflect the way that Monmouthshire wanted to do it, which is a permit-based process, and you can have a number of different containers in that regard. So you'll notice that a window has popped up when Gary selected a number of containers that says, okay, well, actually what you're doing here, Gary, is creating a contract with us. So the first element of that contract is how much of it do you want? So how much of that service? It's a green garden waste contract. It costs £20 per container, per permit per year. You can have any number that you wish. So Gary's happy with one container. That's going to cost him £20. Because this is part of a contract template, and because the platform comes with a products database that you can configure and set up, you can have that set up any way that you like. You can calculate the multiple values of different containers. If you want to order, 2 permits and two containers or whatever it might be, it will automatically calculate all of that. The other thing that we need to do is, because this is a collection point, so as well as having a contractual element, this is also a waste process. There's a physical object that needs to be picked up and emptied and taken away. We need to know where that location is. So there's two things going on there. There's quite a significant fork in the road. There's the contractual side of it, collecting the payment from Gary and making sure that we know that he understands the terms and conditions. And then there's the fact that we have to take that data, we have to know which property this is referenced against, so that we can, the next time that the collection is due, the vehicle goes to the right location and collect it in a timely fashion. So in this case, Gary can type in his postcode or his full address or parcel address and search for it. Just to save a little bit of time, I'm going to use a postcode. I'm going to go E18 2HZ. And I'm going to let the platform do its thing for a second. And what you'll notice is that as I type in an address or a parcel address or a postcode, so the platform is returning to me a selection of addresses that might match against it. That's because my council services and the waste module comes with a full version of NLPG, National Land and Property Gathers here. So we're capturing and building data that will match directly with your council's subsection of NLPG, which will be LLPG, Local Land and Property Gathers here. So there's a full address-based database on here, which will include all of the property numbers and their UPRNs, plus any appropriate street assets and so on and so forth. So I'm going to select Gary's going to select his address, which is 78 Grove Hill, London. He can view the terms of his contract that he's signing up to. He can view the grace policy, the change in novation policy, the termination policy, the cancellation policy. The benefits of doing this as a contract, as opposed to a kind of a one-dimensional linear e-form, is that it gives you and the customer, Gary in this case, and the council, a much clearer set of understanding of what's involved in the contract, and also a much slicker and less labour-intensive way of renewing and managing those contracts as time continues and as they come up for renewal, and so on and so forth. So certainly what we found as we've implemented this with our customers is it almost completely mitigates the headache that is annual renewals, and whether they all happen at a single time, you have a crazy month while that goes on, or whether they happen sequentially every month. But this helps you really kind of iron out the processes and streamline the processes around contract renewal. So Gary's made his selections, he clicks select, and it writes that contract back into the contracts database at this stage. It's only in draft form at the minute. Gary hasn't completed the transaction, he hasn't paid for it. So he's only building up the building blocks. There's a missing piece of information that we're asking for, which is Gary's phone number, so we can complete some records while we're about it. Bearing in mind, we know all the details about Gary because he's a registered customer. And then what we can do is we can go and we can click next. That takes us on to our next step, which is payment. So the first thing that we ask as part of this process is, can we confirm your billing details, Gary? We know who Gary is. He's a registered customer. He's a verified customer for other services, so we can backfill all of those and save Gary some time. So that enables us then to move on to the next step, which is actually the making of the payment. So what we're going to bump into here, folks, is our first point of integration with some third-party technology. Everything you've seen so far has been done in using My Council Services as an integrated platform. What we're doing here is conducting a secure handshake with the chosen payment gateway. I've mentioned before that this process is one that we've borrowed with pride from one of our customers with Monmouthshire in terms of the way that it's configured and set up. They actually use Civica ePayment Suite, and you can see some remnants to references to that and a screenshot of that sitting above that. We're actually using a Barclaycard test payment gateway here. So if I click on that, you'll all be familiar with this from, I'm sure, your own experiences of doing some online shopping. So we handed over securely to the payment gateway for Barclaycard in this example. The payment gateway has securely shaken hands with My Council Services. We've transferred some data over to the payment card industry compliant portal that is Barclaycard Payment Gateway. It's picked up the order reference. It's picked up the total charge, which is £20 in this case, and it's also referring to the beneficiary, which is our company in this case. So of course, that would be the council. What Gary needs to do then is just to choose which card format he wants to pay with. So he's going to pay with a Visa card. I've got some test card payment details tucked away here somewhere. So I'll just copy the number because I can never remember it. And I'll paste the card number in. We'll put Gary's name in because he's the payment guy. We'll put in an expiry date. So that's 02 of next year. And we'll put in a CVC number, which is, of course, just a pretend number. This is a test card. So if you do try this on Amazon, I'm afraid you won't get very far. And then we'll just go and confirm payment. So the payment card, the merchant services and payment gateway capability will do its thing. Having processed that payment successfully or unsuccessfully, it will return the result back to My Council Services through a secure handshake in the opposite direction. So there's an encrypted and secure interaction and integration into the payment gateway at that point. That comes back and accepted. If that card had failed, and if your payment gateway provider, be that Civica, be it Capita, be it WorldPay, be it Go Cardless, be it Barclaycard, be it Iridium, Adelante, whatever it happens to be, and we've done integration into all of them, the range of formats and repeat attempts and fail attempts that your payment gateway provider allows, we can support also. So the flexibility and format type of payment and repeat payment and so on and so forth is really dictated by the payment gateway, and we can support all of those capabilities. So this payment has been accepted, so Gary can then move on and go and get a confirmation of that payment. So he then gets a confirmation of the entire contract setup that he signed up to, the fact that he's paid for it, and he's good to go, and he submits that, and that then exists on his record. So that's a customer using a self-service process to sign up and pay for a revenue-neutral green garden waste process. Take that concept, if you will, folks, and think how that could be applied to trade waste, to sharps, and clinical waste collections, or any other or domestic collections across the borough. So you configure the platform to support all of those intricacies. I wanted to show you that example because it also creates an example whereby a customer is going in and doing something proactively, but it can work on all of those kind of mandated standard delivered services around the waste function also. And we'll dip into the back office at this point and take a bit of a look at that. From the customer's point of view, if he goes into the contracts option on his home screen, you can see that he's got one there created on the 6th of June, Green Garden Waste, contract number 569. So Gary's obviously got a large premises with lots of Green Garden Waste contracts. This has been used more than once for demonstration purposes, of course, but you get the idea. So a customer has got the visibility into all of their transactional details with the council. So where we go next, having created a set of data that has implications in two different directions, actually. It has implications from a contracts point of view, because this is a paid-for annual waste contract, but payment in return for collection. And it's a waste collection point that needs to be added to a round collection at some point, that someone's going to have to swing by in the appropriate vehicle and collect that rubbish and that Green Garden Waste at some point. So we need to go off in a slightly different direction at this stage. What we're going to do next, in the next 10 or 15 minutes of the demonstration and the live kind of walkthrough, is spend a bit of time in the back office. So I'm going to log in under a different profile this time. And I'm not logging in as a customer in this context. I'm logging in as a council operative, as a trusted user, an internal user of the council. You'll notice at points I have to stop speaking when I'm typing. It's, I think, a multitasking constraint on my part. So having typed in, hopefully, having registered and typed in hopefully the right password, if I click on login, that will take us into an environment that the customer would never see, but that council operatives would see. And the first environment that we see is a service desk suite. Now this is set up under what we call role-based access control. So based on your profile, you only get to see data that's relevant to your job role and your privilege level, and also functionality that's relevant to your job and privilege level. I'm logged in as a super administrator, so I get to see everything. So I can see potholes, dog fouling, food hygiene, all sorts of different things. But if I want to filter that view, and instead of looking at reported issues, I want to go and look at if I can find the right form. Just have a momentary block, just trying to find the right form, folks. Bear with me a minute. There we go. Green Garden Waste registration. So I can slice and dice that view. So you've actually got, as well as the kind of privilege-based view of the data, you only see what's relevant for you to see and what's secure for you to see. You can also slice and dice this view in Service Desk to look at it as a tabular report, as a chart or a map, and you can slice it by date. So I'm just going to go and take a quick look at apply for it Green Garden Waste registrations, and see if Gary's most recent Green Garden Waste registration comes up. So you can see when I slice that view and filter that view, I get a top line tabular report that says we've got service request number 152892. It's a Green Garden Waste registration today at 10:29, incoming from a Mr. Gary Wilcox. And if I click back on that number, then I can drop right back in to the specific detail of that specific service request, and in this case, contract sign up for Green Garden Waste. So if I scroll down, I can see all of the details that Gary submitted in terms of the customer details. I can see any documents that were uploaded if that was the case. And I can also, on the right-hand side panel, I can start to manage pretty much every aspect of that particular service request. So if I need to send a note back to Gary, I need to create a document off the back of it. I need to create a different contract. I need to change the categorization of it in some way because it's been miscategorized. I need to print something, share it with a colleague internally. I can do all of those things through the Service Desk functionality. Now, the other area that I'd like to go to with you is just to pull up a couple of other aspects to this. I talked about, as we went through the sign-up process, the ability to create both a contract template and also a collection point on a round. So I'm going to start with the contract template, if I may. So I'll go back to I'm going to click on the contract tab, and that will take me through to effectively kind of I suppose a business management view of what's going on from a contract perspective. I can, within the contracts tab, I can either filter to view existing contracts, and you can see Gary's most recent recent sign up for Green Garden Waste, contract number 569, sitting at the top of that list. But also from the, and we'll drop into that in just a moment, but also from that, if I'm working with a customer, say I'm an administrator within the Waste and Environmental Services function, or perhaps I'm a customer services agent and I'm working in the customer services team and a customer contacts me and they want to sign up for a new contract, I can also create a contract using any existing template on the platform through that Create Contract button. So I can do all of those different things from here. So I've got effectively a management capability and a management console, and I've got an assisted process console from here as well. There are other ways that could be done in a call center environment, but again, that's a subject for our customer services webinar that we run every few months also. So let me just drop back into Gary's most recent contract, which is the Green Garden Waste contract number 569. As I drop back into that contract, I can see the start date and the end date. I can see the customer contact details and the location. I can see the value of that contract. I can see any tasks associated with it. And I can see any audit history, everything that's been done to it effectively since the contract was created. If I need to go in and change the status of that contract, or I need to renew it, or I need to understand what the termination policy is around that contract, I can go in and see it. So the contracts interface at this level gives you the ability to view existing contracts, to manage those contracts either with a customer present or not present, or as an assisted process, or to create a contract with a customer based on an existing contract template. So where we'll go to in a moment is just to go back to take a look at where you actually kind of configure those contract pieces. So that's the contract kind of business management side. But the other element I wanted to show you is just on the waste side as well, because of course what we've also done here is to, as well as creating a contract signed with Gary using the contracts module in My Council Services, we've also had to create a collection point. So what the process and the platform does is when Gary signs up in the first instance, it captures the address against which his Green Garden Waste contract is going to be secured, collects payment from it. Having completed that, it then gives that spatial reference, the UPRN and effectively the grid reference, and the platform then does a spatial match between the existing Green Garden Waste round collection data in Gary's area, and it slots in this new collection to be added to that particular point at the appropriate location. So it does that quite complex spatial match between the new sign up and how that fits into the existing round collection data. We can go and take a little look at that in fairly simplified format by clicking on filter and saying we want to look at Green Garden Waste. We might want to look at a particular round, F01, and we're going to put Gary's postcode in because I just want to retrieve Gary's details, and click on search. We search those in descending order, and what we actually see is we're seeing Gary's most recent one at 78 Grove Hill. We've got lots of contracts against that property, so there's lots of collections, and at the end of that you can see that 569, Gary's most recent contract sign up for Green Garden Waste, exists on around collection. So it's done two things in the background. It's created a template that's relating to Gary based on a contract that we can also renew and also manage with Gary and help Gary with that as it progresses and ages and comes to anniversary. And it's also added a collection point to existing round information. Where that round information can then go is actually out to our route optimization software. So one of the things I'd like to do is show you a little bit of route optimization on a mobile device, and I'll do that in a moment. Before I do that, I just want to go to a couple of other little areas, and I want to draw our attention back down to the end of the ribbon menu at the top of the My Council Services back office screen to the administration tab, because what I've showed you so far is the customer using a self-service process to sign up for a waste process, Green Garden Waste in this example. We've then looked at the contracts interface to manage the commercial aspect of that relationship, and we've looked at the waste interface to manage the collections aspect of that relationship in terms of where is that collection and what round it against and how do we look it up and so on and so forth. There's another tier of detail that sits behind that, which of course is the configuration setup. So if I just scroll down, so I've taken us into the administration section. I just want to call out a couple of areas. I'm not going to go through this in huge detail, but I just want to show you a couple of areas. First of all is the contract section. So in the contract section is where we can actually go and create all of the parameters that make up the different contract templates. Be that a contract template for green garden waste, be it a contract template for, let's say, a bulky item collection as a paid-for ad hoc service. It's a one-time only deal. Or maybe it's a contract for re-signing your minicab licensing in a different service area. But you can create contract templates across the board in lots of different service areas. So you do that through the contract interface. On the waste side, just to its left, is where you can configure the different collection types effectively. So I click on collections as an example. That will take us into a configuration screen. You can just see some examples that we've already created here. So we've got a street cleansing collection waste collection example. We've got green garden waste, business waste, sharps recycling, domestic collections. If you want to go and create a different collections type, you just click on the plus button, and that takes you into another configuration screen where you can start to set up all of the configuration components that would make a different type of collection. So let's say, for example, you were making a change to the way that your domestic collections are done because there's a new innovation around the way that wheelie bins are being manufactured. And instead of a 240-litre collection, you can have a different size type and it's a different colour, and you need to go and reconfigure that waste collection process. You can go and do that in the platform. So it's a fully integrated end-to-end waste management application, right from configuration of rounds, loading of rounds data, and that includes up to and including the optimization and route planning component, which I want to go and show you in a mobile context just in a moment or two, if I may. So what I'm going to do to show you that is just start up a couple of different pieces of software. Bear with me a second, folks. I have to use a little bit of third-party technology to share a smartphone screen with you if I can. So I'm going to start with a little thing called Teamviewer. Bear with me just for a moment. And I'm going to connect my device through Teamviewer. Okay. Rachel, sorry to interrupt you. You may be busy with questions, but can you see my Android smartphone screen on screen?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, folks. Thanks, Rachel. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop into the My Council Services native mobile application, which has just popped up on screen. And I can show you a couple of things at this point. What I'm going to show you, this is one of the interfaces that mobile workers can use. So think about this in the context of someone out in a vehicle, perhaps in a waste collection vehicle. They might be operating as part of a crew, or they may be operating as a sole operator, a lone worker in a van or on foot. But if I click on the waste aspect of that, I'm just going to go back to get waste data. What you can do from here is actually say, okay, what type of collection are we looking at? We want to get green garden waste collection data. What round number are we working on today? The example here, if I can find it, is F04. I need to pick a specific date, so I'm just going to spin back through the month so I know I've got some waste data I can use. So I'm going to select the date on which we're collecting. That's the 10th of April. Okay. And then if I click go, what that will do is it will retrieve all of that the relevant round collection data and download it to my device. So I could then be in my cab, and as I go through, I can, assuming that the vehicle is stationary and it's safe to do so, I can tap on that and I can say, okay, we've done that one. Bag's not out, complete, other issue, contaminated, too heavy, whatever it might be, or collected, and we can just swipe through it. So we've got the ability to have a tabular view of all of the collection tasks that we've got, whether they're assisted, whether they're otherwise, in what we call the waste mobile worker context. The other thing that this allows me to do is to take a map view of that data. So that's actually using route optimization capability on the device, secure and encrypted, that allows a crew to have a dynamic list of collections that will then allow them to get turn-by-turn directions as they work through the process of their round work and their collection work for the day. So it will locate me where I am. If I then click on Start Navigation, it will then figure out where I am. You'll see that I'm working from my home office today, which is over in East Anglia. The collection data that we've actually got is over in South Wales. but it gives me a round collection option to start with that. And it gives me, you may have heard that on the microphone, it gives me verbal instructions as any in-cab sat-nav would. I can zoom out, I can scroll. I've got 341 collection points. You can see that in the bottom of the screen. So I've got the ability to really get a full route optimization capability to go and do that. That's a very quick example of data creation in terms of around collection data being created, and then also the ability for dynamically that data to go out to the cab so that they can use that on a mobile device, and everyone can work in a more efficient and more automated way. So what I'm going to do at that point, that gives you, I hope, a fairly kind of rapid walkthrough, but hopefully got an overview of the detail around the My Council Services capability from a waste point of view. What I want to do is just very quickly, in the last 5 or 10 minutes or so, just finish off with a few kind of additional features and talk through a few other capabilities. So I'll pull the screen, bring my slides back to full screen. There's an ability to have missed collection automation. So you can only raise a missed bin collection when a bin has already been collected. So you can avoid the complexities that can come and the duplication of effort can come for people requesting bins, reporting bins as missed when in fact the bin wagon hasn't got to them yet, for example, and only if you have the appropriate bin. We can overlay a set of functionality around that in terms of communication. So you can remind folks to put their bin out the night before for a paid for collection or any other connection. That can be done by SMS, by email, by push, or by call. So reminding customers to pull their bin out and put it in the appropriate place, to remind of exception days, so on and so forth. Think about the implications of that kind of thing. That could remove the need to do what my council does, my local authority does, which is expensive laminated hook-on pamphlets on the back of our wheelie bins that inevitably get lost or chewed by the dog. So automated collections in real time. That can also include collections around, notifications around the changes in exception days, or if you've got extreme weather and snow and a vehicle can't access a particular area, so on and so forth. I will nip back in a moment and show you the bin collection day lookup capability, because I didn't show you that. So you can, all of the features of the bin, of the waste collection data allow you to present that to customers as a refuse collection lookup capability. We have a facility on the platform for managing interim addresses. So I talked earlier in the presentation about National Land and Property Gazetteer and how that relates and is a superset to your instance of local land and property gazetteer at the local authority. Well, there are at the moment 6 weekly updates, and we update at least every 6 weeks in line with Ordnance Survey updates, our version of NLPG. But within that 6 weeks, a great deal can happen. New properties can come online, interim addresses need to be created. We have a facility on the platform to create interim addresses that we can then feed back in to the NLPG update process. But it removes the headache of having properties that exist and where people want their bins collected, but not being able to add those two around. So interim address management is an important feature. And then the final thing is that what we talk about is integration out of the box. Now we'll jump back to the back office portal and show you some examples of this in a moment. But we offer payment integration, web service reference integration, and also third-party system integration. So we've done a whole host of different integrations, including integrations into third-party waste contractors. So I think one of the case studies that you might want to look at is our Southend Borough Council case study. And we integrated, I think, into Biffa Whitespace at Southend. Don't hold me to that. I may be quoting incorrectly because I can't remember exactly who their third party was, but it's one of the usual suspects. So we offer a whole range of current integrations, and we can offer it. My Council Services is an open platform in that regard, and offers the ability to integrate relatively quickly and relatively easy into any appropriate third party application. We also offer a suite of analytics, so round overview information can be viewed once it's been planned and deployed from an analytics perspective. And you've also seen on the device I showed you a few minutes ago the idea of a mobile waste worker and the ability to work with that waste data and have route optimized information on the platform, and the ability for team leaders in waste to see overview data of work coming in on an ad hoc basis and whatever that might be. So there's a whole range of different mobile worker interfaces that are available, and we took a quick look in the flesh, as it were, at that route optimization capability working on the platform. We also offer a lone worker capability. So if someone's going to a site which represents a risk or some potential danger, you can have them sign as a lone worker. And the fact that we offer mobile device-based, tablet and smartphone-based capability gives us workforce management and tracking capability. So you can, from a duty of care perspective, keep an eye on where everybody's at and make sure that they're safe, secure, and going about their job in an efficient and effective way. So that brings us to pretty much the end of the session. I hope you've had a kind of useful walk through the platform in that regard. And just to recap on what we've shared with you this morning, we started the journey at the customer end, someone signing up for a specific waste process as a paid service, green garden waste in that example. We then dipped into the back office so that we could understand a little more about how the platform operates in terms of contract management and renewal, and in terms of adding spatial data to existing round collection data. And we then took a look at how you would configure that from the ground up using the platform. That was the administration screens. And then the final piece that we looked at in terms of live technology was looking at some of that mobile waste worker capability, downloading round information and looking at how that presented itself as an optimized route on the platform that could be used as in-cab technology or handheld technology on foot or in another vehicle. I just want to finish off with a few final thoughts from us, and then I'll let you go and get on with the rest of your Wednesday, as I promised you would. We'll be within the hour, so I've kept my end of the bargain in that regard. In terms of My Council services, we offer affordability, we offer functionally rich, highly capable technology, but we try and keep those solutions affordable. Crucially, we offer flexibility, so it's an enterprise platform. You only need to pay for and take on board the pieces that you want to use. So if it's just waste that you're looking at, then you just need to buy the waste components and invest in the waste components. And it's flexible in the sense of how you buy it and how you invest in it, but also in terms of how you configure it. So you can configure it to match your newly designed streamlined process, and you can develop and evolve that process over time. The platform is very, very flexible and agile in that regard. Scalability, we can operate to scale. We've got very large and very small customers, so we've got customers up and down the local authority scale, and we work with 51 UK local authorities today, not exclusively on waste, but across the board. But a good number of those are working with environmental services and waste applications, but we also offer solutions around revenues and benefits information and so on and so forth. And the final piece I'd add is just around support. I mentioned at the top of the presentation that we focus on developing a very flexible tool set and a digital platform that drives transformation in multiple service areas, but we also make sure that customers are supported. So when we implement the platform with a new customer, we make sure there's enough support wrapped around that to ensure that you can get it configured, up and running and working. The last thing that we want to find is that a customer is invested in our technology, and 18 months down the line, they're still not getting value out of it. We will not allow that to happen. And that's testament to our client services approach and our support services approach. Folks, I hope you found that useful this morning. Rachel will be sharing an on-demand version of the recording of this session. Slides will also be available, so you'll receive those automatically either later this afternoon or first thing tomorrow. If you have questions, you know where we are. Thank you very much for your time, and I wish you a productive Wednesday. Bye-bye now.